Way back in '88, there was a question-answer thing about Darwinism in New American Magazine. We've answered a number of these questions and given answers to them. The lack of transitional life forms. So the lack of transitional forms is behind the need for the new theories or models to explain evolution. Now, if it is true that evolution has happened, then you must propose some kind of mechanism that allows evolution to take place without leaving transitional forms. Well, there are no transitional forms. That's the whole idea. The world's leading paleontologists, fossil scientists, all admit this. Punctuationalists, punctuational equilibrium shows no evidence. Presuppositionally hold that we all descended from a common ancestor. Which one? And prove their brand of evolution from lack of data. Why would you even bother taking courses in college? Oh, okay, well, you can read the textbook, but none of it has any data that's supportive. Well, why bother taking the course? Most geologists that look for oil could care less about evolution. They're looking for what they sound in the earth to be less dense pockets. Could be water or oil or both or something else. They're not looking for what fossil is there. The fact that we have no data proves punctuated equilibria in their minds. Their logic? What? Presupposed. Number one, fact one, evolution has occurred. That's not a fact. Presupposed, fact number two, we have no transitional forms. That's not a fact. We have no facts. Therefore, evolution occurred rapidly in isolated populations and left no transitional forms. Obviously, this is an argument from lack of data. And it says, notice the word rapidly? I thought it was uniformitarian, long, many millions of years. And bingo, all of a sudden, transitional life form. Why isn't there a long-term transition from one thing to the next? Doesn't this scientific method demand that theories fit observable facts and evidence, and not the other way around? Science deals with the present. We study chemical processes, biological life, fossils, and so on, in the present. The only thing we have to access to is the present. Scientists make measurements and observations in the present. Now, when scientists want to talk about the past, they may study the present and make inferences about the past based on what they see. On what basis? Most of the inferences are nonsensical, and catastrophism would better answer it. And they're seeming to lean into catastrophism when it gets to transitional life forms. But they cannot study the past. Every piece of data in the modern world has to be interpreted. But you cannot interpret it completely free of any bias. Scientists are all biased and prejudiced people just like anyone else. When scientists attempt to interpret the past, the scientific method doesn't apply. You have to observe and repeat and falsify. Well, you can't observe something. You can observe what ended, but you didn't observe how it began and ended that way. Who can observe or repeat the Big Bang? Who can repeat the origin of life? It just doesn't happen. You can't do it. So it is outside the realm of empirical science. What other kind of science is there? Scientists can believe by faith, but that doesn't make what they believe or have faith in fact. Scientists can believe by faith one way or the other. Once you set up your worldview, then you can study the present world and see if the present world fits the way your worldview sees that it ought to be. I don't go by that. You observe things according to the rules of language, context, and logic. And then you draw your conclusions on those same bases. But you say, well, I believe, even though this is something that I observe, I can't have any proof of what I think it is. I just believe it's something. That's, if you handed in a scientific paper in college or to some organization, they wouldn't even publish it. It's nonsensical. Except they do publish this punctuated equilibria nonsense. Why isn't creationism considered the stronger model since it fits the facts so well? Answer: creationism isn't even considered by many scientists. Scientists, why don't they just refute it? Scientists ought to be willing to investigate all possible solutions to a particular problem. Unfortunately, evolutionary scientists today have decided that anything that is of a supernatural nature is to be excluded from the realm of possibility. The definition of science used to be the search for truth, but these days it is the search for naturalistic explanations relative to so many things, including what the planet Earth consists of, including life. In other words, the supernatural is presuppositionally excluded. Of course, a supernatural creator implies a personal, thinking, transcendent God, a concept many refuse to accept. I'll go one step further. Mankind, the body of man, most life forms are supernatural because we can find no natural reason why something could have evolved into this creature or that creature, man, plant, animal, inorganic material. We just have no explanation in a natural sense. You take a monkey, say a monkey with a visor on its head, eyeglasses, inside a chemical lab, performing experiments and creating things beyond its capacity. That's not naturalistic. That's a cartoon. Many scientists now faced with the overwhelming scientific objections to a completely naturalistic evolution are turning to an extra-natural as opposed to a supernatural explanation, whatever that means. Super means beyond the natural. Extra means beyond the natural. Why? They just have to restate it. Consider Dr. Francis Crick, who won the Nobel Prize for the discovery of DNA, who now claims it is impossible for life to have evolved here on Earth given the natural laws that we observe. It couldn't have happened, the way evolutionists say. So Crick, a brilliant, world-class geneticist, now claims that life came here on a meteorite. It came from outer space. Do we have any meteorites that have anything on them that might give a hint of this? Sir Fred Hoyle, the famous astronomer in Britain, is now saying the same thing, as are many scientists. They call it transpermia, the life that rode here on a meteorite or was brought here, or that something out there has done it, but not God. But this begs the question, who created life on the meteorite? Who was so intelligent enough to send it to Earth? And have that somehow, how did that life continue to procreate? And there's all kinds of life forms, some more advanced than others, that are on the planet. Plants, animals. Is there any transitional indication that a plant could transition into an animal or an animal transition to a more advanced animal? There's still no evidence of that. So, although, mankind cannot create lower life forms either. So in a recent ICR newsletter, Henry Moore stated the neo-Darwinian religionists, Huxley, Dobzhansky, Dewey, thought that evolutionary gradualism would become the basis for the coming world humanistic religion. Evolutionists of the new generation, on the other hand, have increasingly turned to punctuationism, or punctuated equilibrium, or revolutionary evolutionism, or as the favored rationale, largely because of the scientific fallacies in gradualism increasingly exposed by the creationists. And they have to keep explaining, the evolutionists say, well, this happened quickly because it couldn't have happened any other way. It's out of order. Well, we have this uplifting that happens suddenly, and so on. And they make stuff up that's so implausible that it's like a cartoon. This development has facilitated the amalgamation of the Western scientism with Eastern mysticism. Do you also see this happening? Naturalistic evolution just doesn't work. Evolutionists everywhere are beginning to recognize that and are beginning to look for other answers. Many are turning to the paranormal and to the cosmic and to other sources to salvage their theory of development, still without recourse to a personal creator. Finally, evolutionists fail to answer a number of critical questions. If the moon is billions of years old, like the Earth, how come the astronauts only discovered a few thousands of years of dust everywhere on its surface? The first law of thermodynamics is one of every energy conservation. Energy is neither created nor destroyed. The second law of thermodynamics can basically be stated that in spite of this conservation, the first law, the energy available for useful work does decrease, so that the universe can be said to be running down. That's called devolution. Example, the sun's energy is dissipating via heat into the universe, so everything is devolving, not evolving. If the Earth is billions of years old and revolved around the sun for those billions of years, then how could life have existed even in its most primitive form, because the sun would have been too hot as a young star billions of years ago and would have made any form of life on Earth impossible. If everything in the universe is devolving, winding down, and not evolving, according to Newton's second law of thermodynamics, then how is it that the evolutionists claim that man and animals have always been evolving into something higher? Thousands of species go to extinction each year, and no new species has been observed to have been forming since the days of recorded observation. It appears that man and the animals are also devolving. We are not going through a process of evolution, but devolution. Point 5. Why couldn't a creator God have created such things as the light already arriving on Earth from far distant stars, substances with a certain amount of original radiation, so that life on Earth today is as it is, without having to go through billions of years of time? It's very possible that light arrived on Earth from far distant stars because the Earth is in the center of the universe as well. That's called gravitational time dilation. A matter of minutes from outer space. Where did the first matter come from? It could not have caused itself. Matter does not have the intelligence to cause anything that is creative and original. If matter always existed, as some falsely maintain, why could there not be a creator God apart from matter, who always existed? Fossil evidence in rock strata shows sudden appearance of major groups of species and not a finely graded and continuous development of species. Often rock strata show different species right next to one another, when evolutionists say that one of the species was to have evolved into the other millions of years later. Often later rock strata show a supposedly much earlier life form than a lower strata. It's out of place. Could not a worldwide flood better explain how lighter, simpler, and more floatable animals would appear in upper strata? Many Christians claiming to be evolutionists state that the 6 days of creation are days which are even billions of years long. But how does that day in the 6-day creation have an evening and a morning? How long is the morning? It's nonsense. But the Bible says differently. In Genesis chapter 1, the days are said to have an evening and a morning. Creation took place in a literal 6 24-hour days. Scripture supports the literal 24-hour day in the Genesis 1 passage on creation. Compare Genesis 1:5, 8, 13, and 14, and so on. The Hebrew word yom, with an ordinal adjective first, second, and so on, means 24-hour days, whenever this construction occurs in the Old Testament. The normal understanding of the fourth commandment, resting on the seventh day, would require this interpretation if one is to rest for 1 day and not for 1 billion years. Where did the soul of man come from? The lowest type of man is far higher than the highest of animals in so many ways, especially because man has the capacity to worship God. Even hydrogen, a basic building block of matter, is not simple. It is composed of particles including proton, neutron, electron, all obeying and operating flawlessly according to fixed laws. Where did these laws come from? How could they have evolved? Wouldn't they have had to have been in matter to start with it by design? The magnetic force of the Earth has been observed as diminishing at a predictable rate every year. If the Earth is billions of years old, even millions, this magnetic force would then millions of years ago have been so huge as to be strong enough to pull in a whole galaxy like a black hole would. Therefore,